And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
But yeah, I'm so glad that you came on and you made time for this. I'll be honest, I really didn't know all that much about you, but you came across my Instagram feed on just the suggested for you pages, and so I looked at your page and thought, wow, she's lived a pretty remarkable life. So I thought, man, we got to get her on here and see if she can tell us about her story and I guess why you love America so much now, considering where you came from. So let's just dive into it. I want to hear about what life was like for you growing up in Cuba, and yeah, go ahead. I'm just going to be listening here.
Thank you again for having me. I'm very excited to speak with you. I appreciate every opportunity that I have to share about my experience in communism. I think it's really important for especially young people in America to know about it. Yeah. My life in communism was really hard. I didn't know how bad it was until I left, actually, because when you're living in communism with no freedom of speech, no freedom of the press, only 4 TV channels, everything is controlled by the regime, you don't know anything about the outside world. So you don't really know how bad you have it.
Right.
You know, as a kid, as a teenager, I realized that we had some things that needed to be improved. Like we went through long power outages for days, no electricity, no water for days, sometimes no water for weeks. The food was rationed.
What was your family dynamic? I mean, mom and dad, siblings?
Yeah, so it was my mom, my dad, my sister, and my grandma. I had 2 grandmas, the communist grandma and the Catholic grandma. We used to live with the Catholic grandma. And the family was divided, was separated, because one side of the family was very communist, and they believed that my dad and we all were traitors to the revolution and anti-communist, and we didn't fit in society, in the communist revolutionary society. So it was really hard growing up in that division and trying to act and have different personalities with each side of the family. Of course, I always believed and respected what my parents and the Catholic grandma taught me, but at the same time I always had that doubt of what if what they're teaching me at school is half true or somehow true, or what if what my other grandma tells me is real. So it's very confusing for a kid or for a teenager. I think it was mostly when I was about 15, 17 years old, those years, that I started to be more awakened, right? I started noticing more things. And for example, in my history class, my teacher said some comments against me because I had a backpack that had the UK flag.
Oh.
And so he said a bad comment like, oh, those kids that bring items with the flag of another country, that should be treason, because, you know, something like that. So starting that moment, I started speaking up more and asking questions that made the teachers uncomfortable. And that's when I realized that definitely we did not have any freedom of speech, that I wasn't free to say whatever I thought. And after I left Cuba, I realized that it was deeper than that. You know, in Cuba, I never had a political education. I didn't know anything about economics. I didn't even know what supply was and what demand was. I didn't know that. So, because, you know, it was a centralized economy, everything was controlled by the government. They set the prices, they set the salaries, they set all the numbers. Right? So when you leave Cuba, when you live that kind of environment, you start learning how the real world works, and you start realizing that, you know, it's because of communism and this and that, all the technical issues, right, of why it doesn't work.
Yeah.
More than just a lived experience.
What kind of things, I guess, when you were growing up in school? I mean, was there? I'm sure in a communist country there was definitely indoctrination going on in schools. I mean, what kind of things were your teachers telling you and your peers about, I guess, first of all, your own country of Cuba and communism, and then also how did they explain, I guess, America to you guys? How did you perceive America based off of what you were taught in school?
Yeah, from a very young age, they teach us that Americans are our enemy, that they're going to come and attack us one day. They're going to kill a bunch of people, they're going to bomb the country. So we need to learn how to defend ourselves. And I remember I was in a music school, and even in the music school, I was taught how to, hide from the Americans whenever they came to attack us. The cartoons on television were always about U.S. bad, U.S. imperialism, poor Cuba, poor Venezuela, all these communist countries that were friends, that were just trying to live a life, and then the U.S. imperialism wouldn't let them. And, they just teach you to hate Americans, that Americans are bad, that they're evil, that they're greedy. When I came to the U.S., I realized that most Americans don't even know where Cuba is. It's a reality.
Really?
I remember being in college in a class, and the teacher was like, who in this class believes that Cuba is actually a country? And you will be surprised, but a lot of people didn't raise their hands. They didn't even know what Cuba was. And I was like, wow, so Americans really, they don't even care about Cuba. They don't know what's going on there, And, I lived in a house where my parents worked for the tourist industry. My mom used to work at a restaurant. My dad used to work at a hotel. So they heard comments about from foreigners about how the outside world was, and they told us about it. My parents knew that we were not free, and they taught me that, and they told me you cannot leave the house and say anything that we say here. And I always had that feeling, deep in my heart. I was like, Americans know what we're going through. Americans do know. And I remember my dad one day, he pirated a movie that was called The Empire of the Sun. I don't know if you ever seen it.
I've heard of it. I actually have not seen it, but I've heard of it.
From the World War II. And at the end of the movie, when we win the World War II, the Americans drop a bunch of packages with food and supplies for everybody. They didn't care if it was Japanese or who was receiving them. And when I saw that in the movie, it was a moment of realization for me. I thought, Americans are not bad. Look what they're doing. Americans are good.
Yeah.
They help people, and they didn't care who they were helping, if they were helping their own enemies or who.
Yeah.
And it was a click for me, and I'm glad I was able to watch those kind of movies growing up, thanks to my parents. But yeah, I really thought that Americans knew what was going on in Cuba and that they were on our side.
Yeah. Well, and I guess what was it like was there consequences if you openly came out in opposition to the Cuban government, if you were open about it? I mean, what kind of things did you see when people would openly talk negatively about Cuba and the government and communism?
So you don't even need to talk for something bad to happen to you. For example, the communist grandma, she was the leader of the CDR. The CDR was like a group of communists that are in charge of each neighborhood. And they have a leader. So they watch what everybody does, what they wear, the music they listen to, and they report everything to the police. So my communist grandma had an agenda, or like a notebook, and one time I remember there was a party where someone, a neighbor, was wearing a US flag, a bandana or something. And my grandma reported on him, and the guy was arrested for that.
Wow.
For wearing a bandana with the US flag. So you don't even need to speak in Cuba. Now, for the people that speak, of course, they're going to be persecuted. They're going to go to prison. They go to jail. They're tortured. They put charges on them that don't even exist. They literally make up charges to judge them. My father was very, very anti-communist. Very anti-communist. He was considered a traitor by his parents. And I remember one time my dad wrote a huge sign on one of Fidel Castro's property that was near our house. It was huge, and it said, I don't have electricity, I don't have water, I don't have food, I don't have education, I don't have healthcare. How much longer do I have to endure this? And when I'm saying big, like each letter was huge.
Wow.
And I remember my dad was taking me to school when we were coming down the street, and I saw that sign. My dad said, don't react, don't look at anybody, just act normal. And I was so nervous. I was like, why is my dad telling me that? And that I read the sign. I had never seen something like that in my life. Because, no internet, no social media. You don't know what's going on in your own city. You don't know that there are people that think like you and are doing things So I had never
So
seen.
your dad wrote this and put it on a property
Yes,
of Fidel Castro's.
yes, near our house,
Wow.
near where we lived. So I saw that sign, and I saw all the neighbors from the CDR running with paints and cans of paints to paint it off or whatever. My dad never said a word about that. But then, when we were home one day, we had a friend that came over, and he said, He said to my mom, "You have to be careful. I saw your husband a few nights ago painting a huge sign. I was driving, and I saw him at night." And that's when we realized that it had been my dad. And we actually had the evidence because we realized a few days later that we had the same kind of paint in our in the hall in our house. So it was definitely my dad, and then he confessed it to us. But we're so glad that nobody snitched on him and that he was fine.
Yeah. So let's say he had been caught for doing that. I mean, what kind of
He would have gone to
penalty?
prison. He would have gone to prison for sure.
Do you know like how long? Like what for people openly speaking out against the government? Was there like usually a set time frame on how long they would serve in prison, or?
It can be whatever time they want. Right now, there are 17-year-olds, very young people that have been sentenced to 20 years in prison or more. In fact, at that time in Cuba, even if you killed your own cow, you would go to prison for 20 years. So killing a cow is 20 years. Imagine speaking against a revolution, against communism. Same time or more. So we were very scared. Especially my mom, she always lived so scared that my dad was going to say something, that we were going to get in trouble. Imagine, we were not even given a phone service at home because we were not communists. So imagine if they found out that my dad wrote that sign and then that he was speaking in meetings and stuff. So while I was in Cuba, I always thought, my dad is a rebel. He doesn't want to adjust to society. He's going to get us in trouble. I was kind of ashamed, I
Yeah.
was like, why can my dad act normal? He's gonna get us in trouble. When I left Cuba, now I realize how brave my dad was.
Yeah.
And I am so
Absolutely.
proud to be his daughter for that. Because
I bet.
he taught me a good lesson. Even if everybody around you seems like they're thinking the same way, you have your own right to think whatever you want and to express it. And that's a God-given right that you can think for yourself. And my
Wow.
dad taught me a great lesson growing up, and I didn't realize it until I left. That's why I speak now.
Yeah.
I'm free now. I have learned, I have grown up, and I will always remember the example of my father for that.
Yeah. Well, and you said so. Your two grandmas. You said you had a Catholic grandma and a communist grandma, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? So growing up, did you have a good relationship with both of them, or was one of them you were closer with one or the other?
I had a good relation with both, but I was closer to the Catholic one. My non-communist side of the family taught me to act some way in front of the communist grandma. That were certain things that I could not say in front of her. So I had to develop a different personality for her, pretty much. And then also she would try to show me off to her communist friends, and I didn't like that. So every time I was walking near her house, I would hide so she wouldn't see me, she wouldn't find me, And now I returned to Cuba when she was very ill, about to pass away. And I saw her, and I said to myself, oof, I wish I had a better relationship with her, even if she was evil, because she did really bad things in life, to other people. But I think if I had a better relationship with her, maybe I had learned more from that side of the family history. How did she become a communist? I would have asked her all these questions, Why did she think the way she did? But because I was suppressed, kind of, from this other side of the family, to not talk about politics with her, the relation wasn't just the best.
Yeah. Well, and when did Cuba become communist? What year?
1959.
59?
Yes. It's been
So-
almost 70 years.
Okay, so I assume both of your grandmas then they knew what Cuba was when it wasn't communist, correct?
Yes.
So
The difference is... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say. So I guess it's hard to understand how one grandma is she's anti-communism, which makes sense because she probably remembers what it was like before that, and then the other one, she remembers what it was like before that as well, but she was communist, and so. Did you have any? I guess you said you wished you'd spoken to her more about why she believed what she believed, but Did you have any idea of why her beliefs shifted that way of communism?
I have thought about that a lot actually. Especially recently, I posted a video about my grandma. So the Catholic grandma, she's so good in heart. She's the best person I've ever met. She's so good. She really believed that communism was going to save the people in Cuba. She came from a farmer's family, very poor. So when these people came and said, young people, we're going to give free education, free healthcare, she believed it. She didn't know better. So of course at the beginning of the revolution she thought, oh, this is going to be good. She even got a job working as an accountant. You know, everything is owned by the regime in Cuba.
Yeah.
So she didn't baptize her kids so that she could keep her work, her job, because if she baptized them, she would have lost her job with the communists because everything was owned by the communists. So where would she have worked, right? So she kind of complied with them, and she was like, well, maybe it isn't that bad, you know. They're trying to help. There was so much misinformation. What changed my grandma, I believe, was the death of her son. He got leukemia. He died in a very sad situation because there were no medicines in Cuba, no good doctors. He had a good doctor, and that doctor told my grandma that the medicine that he needed was available in the city. So my grandma went to the city, asked for the medicine, and they asked her, what's the name of your son's doctor? So she gave the name of the doctor, and then the doctor got in trouble for that, almost goes to prison for that, and they didn't give her the medicine. So her son died in a very awful way, my uncle. And I think that's when my grandma started, you know, changing her way of thinking. You know, like she was done with that. She said, well, I don't think this is good for anybody because they have the medicines and they're not giving it to the people. So it was like real life situations that opened her eyes. Now with the communist grandma, like I said, I don't know how it was before the revolution for her, but I know she always was in support of communism until the day she died. She even lost her mind, but she never said anything against the revolution.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the one, your communist grandma, that was your dad's mom, correct?
Yes.
So your dad grew up in a household that was pro-communism. So where was the shift for him to go anti-communism?
Because of growing up in a house with so many restrictions and propaganda and everything, my dad just grew up being a rebel. He grew up being anti-communist, fully anti-communist, but also an atheist. Because, you know, communists believe that God doesn't exist, that religion is the opium of the world. So he got something from communism for sure, which was growing up atheist and not believing ever in God, and also being anti-communist. He hates it with all his heart.
Wow. And so at what point in your life was there a tipping point where you finally said, okay, I have to leave, I have to get out of here? Was there an event that happened that triggered that just, you decided, I have to go?
I think it was, well, my parents were always looking for ways to leave Cuba. We tried first Canada because Canada was offering great programs for immigrants. We didn't have the money. We then tried Europe, Germany. My dad tried Germany. Nothing worked. So I remember when I was a teenager, we were already working on the process of getting our Spaniard citizenship, which that's the way that we left Cuba. We became Spaniards through our ancestors. But it was a long process. It took many years. And we were patiently waiting, but one day there was this group of Canadians that came to our school. I was in a music school and they came from their music school from Canada. And every time we had these delegations of students from outside, we were taught how to behave, what to say, what not to say. We could never be left alone with them, you know, they were scared that we were speaking. And the last time I went to one of these events with them, I sneaked out with one of the students and I told them everything. I told them, I'm trying to leave Cuba. This is not what you're saying is not the truth. This is all a show that they're putting on for all of you guys. And I just expressed myself for the first time. You know, I realized that these young people, they had phones, they had internet, they went to restaurants. The life they talked to us about was so different from mine. And every time I got home from going to an activity with the foreigner students, I came home and I realized I didn't have water, I had to wake up at 3 a.m. And fill up my tanks of water and help my grandma filling up bottles of water for the next few days. We didn't have food, we didn't have electricity. I said, I don't want this life. Why can't I live like they live? Why can't I just wear a pair of Adidas, and if I want to buy them? And I think it was that contact that I had with foreigners that made me realize that I wanted to leave, that I wasn't going to stay in Cuba, and I didn't have a life there or a future there. I wasn't free.
Wow. And yeah, that's that's incredible, because it's obviously, for me, born and raised in the United States, I can't even comprehend that type of a life, having to, the government just controls everything. I've got to watch what I say, watch what I do. And so in that moment, though, where you went and told that foreign student everything, that, I guess, was that decision kind of did you just something snap inside and you just said, I've got to tell them, I've got to talk to somebody and just get this all out there, even though you knew that if, your teachers or whoever found out that you would
was watching,
be
and
in
they
big trouble.
immediately came out after us. But I was able to tell them everything.
Wow. Wow. So what, I guess, did you and your whole family leave at the same time, or did you leave separately? How did that process of the journey to America, how did that work out?
Yeah, so as Cubans, we were not allowed to leave the island. There was no way for us. And so we found out that we had Spaniard ancestors, a great-great-grandfather. And the Spaniards were letting you become Spaniard if you had ancestors. So we did all that process. It took many years. My parents left first because they got their papers first. They went to Spain. Now they were Spaniards. They could leave. They went to Spain, and once they got a job, place to live and everything, it was just on time for us to get our papers and finally be able to leave. Mm-hmm. We went to Spain. Grandma came with us as a visitor because, she wasn't a Spaniard. She had a Spaniard ancestor, but she didn't do the paperwork for her. It was very difficult to find the birth certificate of her ancestor, so she couldn't get it done. But
so
she was
the ancestors that you did yours through was through your dad's side. Is that right?
No, it was through my mom. It was my grandma's husband, so my mom's dad.
Okay,
right?
Gotcha.
So that grandma, the Catholic grandma, she did have ancestors too, but because we couldn't find the paperwork for them, she couldn't become a Spaniard. But we were able to bring her to Spain with us for about 2 years, and she lived a good life for those 2 years with us. But then we were very scared because there were elections going on here in the US. And in Spain there's a lot of propaganda about Donald Trump and the US and everything. So long story short, we were very scared of Donald Trump, and we thought that he was going to eliminate the policy that was in place at that time for Cubans. That was a dry feed, wet feed policy. It meant that if you were Cuban, you got here and you were caught by the authorities with dry feed in dry land, you could stay legally.
Okay.
So it didn't matter if you came in a plane or in a boat, as long as you were caught with dry feet, you could stay legally. So when we saw the news about Donald Trump and the elections and everything, we said, we gotta go to the US fast.
So this is 2015?
2015, 16, yeah.
Okay.
Right before the elections. So our final goal was to come to the US. It's just that we couldn't come straight from Cuba here. We had to go to Spain first. We were like, we gotta make a decision now. We have to go to the US before Donald Trump gets elected and he eliminates that policy. So we elaborated our plan and we came to the US, but we had to drop off Grandma in Cuba because she was not a Spaniard citizen. She had no way to come to the US now.
Wow.
So we came with our Spaniard passport, and once we arrived to the airport, we explained that we were also Cubans and we wanted to get the dry feed, wet feed law. That's how we were able to stay. A few months later, after we arrived, it was Barack Obama that eliminated that policy right before leaving his term. So we were one of the last lucky Cubans to be able to come legally and stay legally. And then
you were in fear the whole time that Trump was going to eliminate the policy, but Obama ended up eliminating it before Trump takes the office. Okay.
That's correct. And so, lots of propaganda in Spain. It's crazy. But it was really hard to leave Grandma in Cuba. After she lived those 2 years in Spain with us, the normal life, because I call it the nice life, but it's the normal life that you and I are having here right now. with electricity, screen. We can watch the movie that we want, eat what we want. It was so hard to leave her there. I remember just crying and crying and crying. I think that's the hardest time of my life ever, to leave my grandma. And I felt so guilty. But she said, you go and you leave and be free and be happy. Because as long as you're free and you're happy, I am going to be happy too. And don't worry that my time will come. If God wants it, I will go with you and I will see you again. So, so it took her about 7-8 years to finally be able to come. We had to become US citizens and everything and then bring her here. And now she lives here. She lives in Miami with my parents, just watching TV all the time. She loves watching TV, reading books, all the books that she likes, doing sudokus and puzzles and eating everything she likes. She likes crackers, oranges, normal stuff that she doesn't have.
The simple things that we take for granted that we don't realize other people are, they can't do the simple things in life like that.
Exactly.
Oh, so you said your father was, he's anti-communist, but he was an atheist. So, and obviously though you have a very strong faith in God and Jesus Christ, did that mostly stem from your grandmother, your Catholic grandmother?
Yeah, she definitely was the one that taught me that God existed. She taught me that God was always watching over me, that he was always with me wherever I went, to pray to him every night and talk to him and ask him with faith anything that I wanted and that it was going to happen. And it's true. Every time I was in Cuba and I felt like I was in a dangerous situation in the middle of the night walking from school, God protected me. I was always praying, always. I would keep repeating the Catholic prayers once again and again and again until I got home, and I was always safe. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank goodness for your grandma.
Yes, definitely.
Changed the trajectory of your life, it sounded like. But your father as well. I mean, the courage that he had to stand up against communism and to ultimately get you guys out of there. So
yes.
Now, when you came to the United States, I mean, I guess what was the biggest culture shock for you when you got here? Was there something that it just blew your mind that was something that was normal here, something you could do here? Was there some big culture hurdles and shocks for you?
Shocks, yeah. In the capitalistic sense, no, I wasn't that shocked because I had already been to Spain and I already had witnessed capitalism, Of course, here it's much better than in Spain. But what shocked me the most was the amount of people that didn't know what communism was or what was happening in Cuba, because I really believed that Americans were on our side. And with time I realized that I was defending America from Americans. And I thought that I was going to be doing what I do nowadays, I feel like many Americans feel confident when they are around me to speak their minds and try to make comments against the U.S. as a way to sympathize with me or something. I don't know, that's what I perceive. Like they say things like, oh yeah, poor immigrants, or yeah, our country's so bad to you, or things like that. I said, it's not bad, it's the best for us. That's why we didn't stay in Spain. We came here, and I have so many friends from everywhere in the world that were in Spain and now they are here in the U.S. This is the best country for immigrants. So, and I realized that many people, they support communism, they support socialism, all the things that I came from, and that was really shocking for me, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think too, growing up in the, the American education system and stuff, I would have, all growing up when I heard communism, I really just thought of, the Soviet Union, and, we defeated the Soviet Union, the Cold War was over, and, communism's done and it's dead, and that's just not the case at all. We, like you said, most Americans, they don't really know anything about Cuba or what's going on in Cuba. And so I also wanted to get your thoughts and opinions on, I guess, what's going on there right now. There's a lot of tension going on right now between, the United States and Cuba. I mean, I'm sure you still have family and friends over there. So, but what are your thoughts on the heightened political tensions right now between the two countries?
Well, I think the most important thing to say is that the situation that Cuba is in right now is the same that we've been in for almost 70 years. So Donald Trump and the US government not allowing oil to come into the island, partially because ships from Russia have come and left oil there, and also from Mexico, that hasn't changed our situation for worse. It's always been like that. I have videos, I have evidence, physical evidence, from me being in Cuba with days with no electricity. And that was when Cuba was receiving tons and tons of oil from Venezuela. So right now there is a big campaign saying that the US is suffocating Cuba, like they're not letting any oil go there and people are suffering. And this is all part of the propaganda. That the propaganda that says that the US is bad, that the US doesn't let other countries live peacefully, is simply not true. Simply not true. And if we get another president in the US after Donald Trump that gives more air or oxygen to that dictatorship, we're gonna go backwards, you know? It's never going to end. We need a president that is willing to treat communists as what they are, criminals. They're nothing else than that. The people are suffering while the leaders are living the good life. So it doesn't matter if when Barack Obama was doing relations with the Cuban regime, the people were still suffering. They were still hungry. They still didn't have electricity, no water, the same conditions. Nothing changed. The only thing that changed is that tourists were going to Cuba to have fun and leave more money for the dictators. So we need a president to end this once and for all. And once it ends, I personally believe, that the communist ideologies and revolutions trying to be started here in the US are going to end. They're going to slowly start to die. The Cuban regime has invested so much money into destabilizing governments in the whole continent and in the US for years. All the money that they make, they put it into this, into changing people's ideologies, into establishing, or making trips from the US to Cuba to indoctrinate kids. That's what they invested on. And of course to repress their own people. So we need to stop giving money to dictators. We need to stop treating and doing business or communicating, talking with dictators. We need to treat them for what they are, and this needs to be done soon.
Yeah.
We need to be free.
No, I completely agree with you. And I guess that's kind of leads me to my next question is, yeah, you do see, especially among, younger people in the United States, this rise of pro-communism, pro-socialist, ideologies and tendencies now. What do you think about that? I mean, I know what you think about that, but I guess how much does that concern you with what you see going on? And I guess what would you say to those young people that are pushing those ideas here in the United States?
Yeah, I think many people do it from a good heart. They have good intentions. They're trying to find equality and that we are all the same and that we all have the same stuff and free this and free that. But they only think that way because they haven't really studied the consequences of socialist policies or communist policies. They haven't studied history as it was lived by me and other victims of communism. They have been brainwashed, unfortunately. And I know that they don't like it when I say it, but it's true. And I'm very worried about this. In fact, this is why I got involved in all this. This is why I'm talking to you right now in this podcast. Because I moved to Utah and I realized that there was the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Communist Party of Provo, Armed Queers of Salt Lake City, and multiple organizations. They all work so quiet, so nobody knows about them. They are sending people to Cuba. Even the University of Utah is sending young Americans to Cuba every year. They get indoctrinated there, and then they come back to Utah and teach about it. And their goal is to create a revolution in the US. And the revolution, the socialist revolution, would lead them to communism. That's the end goal. They said it themselves. I've been to their meetings. So this is not just something that I'm making up. So I went with all this evidence from this group. I investigated them a little bit. I went with a congressman, a U.S. congressman, back in 2023. I sat with him and I explained what was going on. I said, can you do anything about this? And his only question was, or comment, how many of you are there? How many people think like you here in Utah? How many Cubans are here? I said, who are you with? It's just me. There's nobody else. I just moved here. I don't know any other Cubans. And he kept repeating himself. So how big is your group? I don't have a group. It's just me. Please pay attention to this. This is an issue. We need to. This is serious. They want to take Cuba off the countries that the list of countries that sponsor terrorism. Biden was doing that, and he didn't care. He just didn't care because it was just me. That's when I decided that I needed to be active in this. That I needed to find more people that thought like me. To the point that I founded Youth for Liberty, a non-profit, and I have been able to make a good group of young people that think like me, that love America, that don't like communism, and we're trying to do our best to educate other young people. I have already trained other victims of communism, immigrants, to go to schools and speak like I have, and that's what I'm doing right now. And sometimes I just want to quit. I'm going to be honest with you. This week, for example, I was just thinking, I just want to delete everything and just be in peace at home with my kids and my husband. Because it's really hard. I have been threatened. I am hated. People who have blocked me. But then I find some people that say, I thank you for what you're doing. I have learned something new. Just keep going, and people encourage me, and I keep going, but I don't know how much longer I can keep this up for. I don't know, because mentally there is a moment when your mind and your heart just cannot take it anymore. I put my face out there on social media, and I have a lot of followers now. I have 7,000 followers. That's something crazy to me, because at the beginning when I started, I had nobody, no followers. Not even my family was following me, and now I have famous people that my family following me. So it's just crazy to me, and I have found a place on social media where I have people that constantly message me and say, thank you so much for what you're doing. I love what you're doing. Keep it up. Even an actor the other day DM'd me and said, keep it up, Gaby. And I said, wow. So smart people, famous people that are successful are telling me to keep up. So maybe I should keep up. I should listen to them, Yeah. But other days I'm just down and I'm like, what am I doing? I shouldn't be involved in these things. I should just stay quiet, I should just stay.
Yeah, but your voice is so important here, though. I mean, because there's nobody, at least that I know personally, that can speak to this better than you can because of your lived experience with communism. And the youth that have grown up in this country, they don't understand it. I don't fully understand it, but I listen to people like you that have lived it, that have fled it, and that recognize that America is such a great place compared to the alternative, compared to communist countries, compared to even socialist countries. Free market capitalism is a great way to live. It's the best way to live. And so I applaud you with the group that you started, the nonprofit. That's incredible. And for those days that you do feel down, I'm sure that how often do you just think back to those moments where you think, I don't want to do this anymore. Let's just delete everything and live a quiet, happy life in America. How often do you think back to, the sacrifices your parents, your grandma made when you were a little kid growing up in Cuba and got you out of there? How often does that come back to mind and motivate you?
All the time. Every day I remember.
Yeah.
And I know deep in my heart, I know that I need to keep going for my kids, because I don't want them to leave them in a country like the one I grew up in. I want them to always be free, to always have access to opportunity, and be what they want to be, buy what they want to buy. Just be happy, have the right to be happy. That's what I want for my kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's of any parent. I mean, me, that's what I want. But you have experience, and you know full well how that happiness can really be destroyed by, well, communist regimes, by government overreach and things like that. But I wanted to ask too, touched on this a little bit. Not only is a lot of the narrative out there from, you see a lot of the younger groups that, you know, they want more socialist type of government, and which eventually goes to more communism type. But the big thing is capitalism is evil. They think capitalism is evil because it's just getting, you know, the rich richer and everybody else is suffering underneath. What do you think the main thing is that people in America don't fully understand about capitalism, about the systems that we have here?
I think they always describe capitalism to be a greedy kind of system and selfish and evil in general because it enriches other people or make some people millionaires and while others stay poor. So it's a system that to their eyes is not fair, right? Because some people are up here and others are down here. To my eyes, that's the most fair system that there is, because the moment that you take something from someone to give it to others, you are already infringing the freedoms of that individual that you took things from. So is that fair also? No. What is worse, to take away freedoms from somebody, or to leave things in their own, to provide opportunities for everybody, no matter their color, their race, their nationality? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, for example, and I'm a living example of that. I came to this country, I didn't know English, I still have an accent after 10 years in this country. I was still able to go to college. And I don't want to say it was because of DEI. But I went to Idaho back in 2016. 2018. So it was a little before the DEI craziness started, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't get any special help. And I didn't know anything about economics, microeconomics, and I still made it. I was able to graduate. I studied so hard. I lived in a tutoring center. And you know, I was able to realize that there were students that were black, students from everywhere, and we were all here in America, in Idaho, in the middle of nowhere. And we were studying. Some people were smarter than others, some people were, they worked harder than others. But at the end of the day, we all had the same opportunity, and we all have found a way to pay for that college. Mm-hmm. So it is possible. In America, everything is possible thanks to capitalism, thanks to the opportunities that it provides to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you were born in Cuba, but now, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but you are a, full-blooded American now, right? Is that how you describe yourself? You are an American through and through.
For sure. If America goes to war with Cuba, I'm going with America, for sure.
Well, and I think that's one of the coolest things about America too is, you know, a lot of people, you know, if I were moved to a different country, typically I'm still just going to be, people view me as an American. I don't know if I would really be fully accepted as, you know, for example, if I moved to France, I don't think I would be considered French really ever. But you have people come from Cuba, come from all over the world to America, and they fully embrace the American experience and love it and love Western civilization. And you are fully an American. I mean, I don't see it any other way. You're living the American dream to the fullest right now. And so I just think that's so cool to see and so inspiring to see as well. But I did have another question too, because you have this rise of, obviously, like I said, people petitioning for more socialist, communistic policies and government here. Well, you also see this idea of, I guess America first, America only, meaning that we don't look at any other countries. We just worry about what's here on our soil. You know, we don't mess with any other countries, even if they're oppressing their people or things like that. We just worry about what's here, which I think is, I think it's shallow thinking, honestly. But I wanted to get what are your thoughts on that? It's kind of a new rising ideology that's starting right now.
Yeah, I definitely have mixed thoughts about that still. In some part, I understand that Americans are going to want their country to be good first, and there are a lot of problems that we need to fix here, for sure. and they're not comparable to problems from a third world country, of course. But there are problems Americans want to solve here first before they worry about another country. But I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and ignorance about international issues and other countries. For example, they think that if Donald Trump is now to take over Cuba, there's going to be a war, and we're going to put lots of money into Cuba, and I don't think that's what's going to happen. In my opinion, if the U.S. does something with Cuba and Cuba is free, lots of millionaires that live here in the U.S. that are Cubans or even non-Cubans millionaires are going to go and invest in the island. And that's what's going to happen. The people are going to invest in the island and are going to put their own money and their own energy into fixing the island. So that's just one example. I'm going to speak from my home country because that's what I know mostly about.
Right.
But definitely, I think the U.S. should not be trading or doing businesses or helping any dictatorship at all. And if there is anything that the U.S. can do to provide peace and justice to those countries that are suffering right now, we should do it. Right now, the U.S. is not letting oil come into Cuba mostly. That's something good. That's something that's helping Cubans get their freedom soon. Hopefully, it's better than having a president doing business with them all the time. And so I think there's a lot of ignorance, and people need to learn more about what's actually going on in other countries and how the U.S. is getting involved with international issues. Overall, I know the Israel thing is a big thing right now,
Right.
and most Americans are worried about that specifically.
Yeah. Which I mean, obviously, having concerns and worry about anything on international level it's totally normal, right? And to have questions. But to your point, you mentioned something earlier when we were talking about these socialist communist ideas that are coming to America. But you'd said that if the communist regime in Cuba falls, you believe that those ideas that are sprouting here in America will also suffocate and end.
Definitely. That's why I think that taking Cuba is America first. Because people think that the problems here in America come from, from other root causes. It comes from Marxism. If you look at any problem, almost any problem that we have in the U.S., it all leads to Marxism or to Marxist ideologies. And the way of thinking of people, once everybody's thinking of, this country is bad, I'm going to hate this country, we are controlled, all the parties are bad, everybody's bad, the government is bad, you start hating the country. And when all the people hate the country, what's going to happen? Nobody's going to stand for America. Nobody's going to stand for our values. Right now I found myself arguing both with communists and socialists in the U.S., but also people that once used to refer to themselves as conservatives or right-wingers, and right now I don't see lots of support for America, at least on social media, from either side.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's part of that is a big problem, I think, is social media, in that where obviously I think people like to jump onto bandwagons of saying really outrageous things because it's going to get clicks, it's going to become more popular. I've found, at least when I've gone out and talked to people and interacted with others, that the loud noise that's on social media, that really isn't the majority of how Americans think. But it's concerning, though, that it's becoming, it's being put out on mainstream platforms, and it's being, it is being reshared, it's being circulated a lot. And so, but to your point, I think that if the United States is capable and able to root out socialism, communism, terrorists, I think that's in our best interest, easily in our best interest. But I wanted to also just get an idea of, now that you've lived in America, I just want to hear about, the life that you've built for yourself now that you're not under a communist regime. What's your life like now? How is it?
Yeah, so I graduated from college, and then I started working as a paralegal for immigration attorneys in Houston. And I loved my job because first I loved helping people, and I just love being in an office, working in my computer with the AC on, and everything is so comfortable, you know. I couldn't complain. Then I moved to Utah. I started working online, the same kind of job but online. And besides working, I love traveling. I travel a lot, not only outside the US, but I also travel within the country. I love this country. I love road tripping, Yellowstone, Wyoming. I love those places. I love southern Utah where I live. And
It's where I live.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love it, and we just drive around and um, listen to music while driving. I love going to the grocery store, and every day, I promise to you, every day I see a new item that I've never tried, and it just amazes me, you know, that how can people come up with so many ideas and of what food to make and what flavor? I think that
Well,
we're
and what was
uh
that compared to what was a grocery store in Cuba like?
empty.
Yeah.
Empty. Like I had never had cereal. I had never had Oreos, for example. Like no Coca-Cola, nothing like that. So I think the weirdest thing I've seen here so far was like a pancake syrup that is blue. It's like a cereal pancake syrup, and it's blue.
Cereal.
And I would
Oh,
never try
okay.
that because it looks like poison. But I just think it's
It
really
probably is poison.
it is. But it just looks so cool and it just impresses me so much, you know. I'm like, wow, like capitalism is so cool. People just comes up with ideas and they make it happen. They bring it
Yeah.
to reality, you know. And I just love my life here. I love walking outside and feeling safe, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I've been to other parts of the US where I have not felt safe. But not as bad as in Cuba, you know, you always have the police right there. You can call the police, and policemen are so nice here in the US. Our authorities are so nice. I have lost my wallet like twice or three times since I came to the US, and it's always brought to me by a policeman, and they're so nice, so respectful. They never ask for money, you know, no corruption. And I'm not saying that there is no corruption, there probably is corruption, but in day-to-day life you don't see that, and it's very different. The way people treat you when you go to the store, and everybody just kind of minding their own businesses, but at the same time they're nice to you and they're willing to help if you need something, a question, or Americans are great, and this country is amazing. I just love my life here. And right now we're moving to Florida, and my husband got accepted in a residency program there for
Oh, that's
medical
exciting.
stuff. Yeah, very excited. So I'm very happy that I'm going to be living closer to my family now. They live in
Oh yeah,
Miami.
you said they're in Miami still.
Yeah, and I love Florida. It's so beautiful as well. And it feels so free.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know what I mean. Have you been to Florida?
I haven't been to Florida, but I
You
love
have
their
to.
governor. I love their governor, so
When COVID was going on, I visited my family in Florida, and I just felt free. I felt like living normal life again, you know. I went
mhm.
to the parks in Orlando. Nobody was wearing masks or anything. People were just living their lives, you know. And it's just something amazing. It's just I love Florida, and I love the US. And I know anywhere you live in the US, even though some places are better than others, you're still free. You still have the same opportunities. You don't like it there? Move. You can move. You can
Mhm.
just move. You
Yeah.
can get in your car, or you can buy a ticket in a bus and go somewhere. You know, there's so many possibilities for
Yeah.
you to make a life and make a difference in your life.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Gabby, as we close here, and I think you really just answered it with what you just said, but um, I want to end it with the name of my podcast is I Choose America. I want to ask you that exact question. Why do you choose America?
I choose America because as someone that had to emigrate, I first lived in another country that didn't provide all the opportunities and freedom that a human being deserves. And as an immigrant, the US just happens to be the best country that there is, um, because it provides all the opportunities, resources, help that people need to start your life from zero. And it is not just applicable to immigrants. If you're in the US and right now you're completely broke, you are in a very bad situation in life, you can start from zero the next day. That's a promise that I make to you because it happened to my family and me. We came here with nothing, and 1 month later, we all had jobs. The first place where I stopped to ask if they were hiring, they hired me. and I was cleaning floors, I was cleaning toilets, I was dealing with difficult situations, and I loved it. And I was so grateful because this country gave me the opportunity to work, to make money, so that I could go to the store and buy the pair of shoes that I liked. And that was the best thing ever, you know? Or go to the store and buy a pack of cookies, or, you know, I was free to buy and to work. And it's just, America is just the best country there is. It simply is the truth. And you will see lots of people coming here to start from zero, but you will never see an American going to Spain or going to another country with no money in their pockets. You will never see that. Yeah, you will see Americans moving to Mexico, but they will keep their jobs from the US or to Spain, right? And will keep their jobs here. You will never see an American emigrate to another country and start from zero there, try to start with paperwork. Simply, it's hard. It's hard, almost impossible. Here in America, everything is so easy.
Well,
So
thank you. I couldn't agree more with you, even though I don't have your life experience. So I think your words are more powerful than if it came from me. So where can people find you and your organization at?
yeah, so right now I'm on Instagram, Gaby Politics Matter, and then my nonprofit is Youth for Liberty, and also we are we're not on Facebook yet, but we do have a website saying
Okay.
Youth for Liberty, and that's where I post all the work that I do and my story. I've been trying to keep up with blogs and speak or explain more about Cuba and communism. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and
thank
jumping
you.
on. And yeah, this was incredible. Thank you so much for all
Thank
of
you
your
for
words and
having me
for
here.
no, thank you. I mean, this has been great, and I appreciate you coming on. And so I'd love to have you on again in the future sometime, and maybe once you're in Florida and you're enjoying, Ron DeSantis country there. So
Yep.
okay. Well, thank you so much, Gaby.
Thank you again. Bye
See ya.
bye.